Hi everyone out there in the world of YouTube or wherever it is you may be checking out this video. And if it's just a clip or the very first part of this video, stop what you're doing and take time to watch this entire interview with my guest today. And those of you familiar with the channel know the guests fall into one of three categories. Either the person is a featured guest, a distinguished guest, or a special guest. And there's no question which category my guest falls into today. She is a special guest to the left of your screen. I will be introducing her in a moment, but first let me say my name is Jacqueline Anderson. Of course, everybody calls me Jackie. So thanks for tuning in. So share the video, subscribe, please leave some comments. But back to my special guest. She is a celebrity. Of course, she is a certified public accountant and has several years of accounting experience under her belt. And she's a producer, author, like I said, she's a celebrity filmmaker, family woman, married, children. She's doing it all. In addition to that, she's also the associate professor at the School of Accountancy and MIS at DePaul University in Chicago. But back to her producer and filmmaker credits, she is the lady behind a documentary called All the Queen's Horses. I hope she shares a little bit about that and how that came about, how her accounting career led to that. She is an expert, speaker, lecturer, knows a lot about fraud and forensic accounting. So my special guest today is Mrs. Kelly Richmond Pope. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I appreciate you saying yes to do this interview and talk about your experience being an accountant, the CPA journey, and maybe share some experiences with students in the classroom and how it's led you to what you're doing now with producing and filmmaking.
Sure.
Well, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Great. I start all the interviews with this one question, which is, what is your name on your birth certificate?
Kelly Richmond Pope. Well, on my birth certificate, I'm married, so Kelly Richmond. However, you shouldn't tell your name on your birth certificate. Someone might steal your identity.
Oh, really? Okay, and you can talk about that since you're fraud expert.
Yeah, that's a lot of information.
Right. Okay, well, thank you again for being here. So what state and what year were you licensed?
Oh, I was licensed in North Carolina. Gosh, I don't even remember the year. And I'll tell you why, because I had a very non-traditional path. I graduated from North Carolina A&T State University and then went to graduate school at Virginia Tech to get my master's and my PhD in accounting. Only 4 years after that did I sit for the CPA exam. So this was years after I had finished undergrad. So I'm a relatively new CPA in comparison to my cohort. So I think I might be 10 years in, but I have to look it up. But yeah, so I didn't become a CPA at like 21 like you're supposed to. I became a CPA more like at 32, 33. So anybody listening, don't do that. If you're majoring in accounting, get it out of the way early. But the reason why I didn't do it is because I got my PhD. So I was like, I got a master's and a PhD. Why do I need a CPA license too? But I actually did need it. So I had a very non-traditional path.
Okay, I hope we can kind of circle back to that and you can share more about that. So are you from North Carolina?
I'm from Durham, North Carolina originally, yes.
And North Carolina A&T is HBCU?
Yep, that's where I went.
All right.
Number one HBCU in the country, by the way.
All right, historically Black college and university. Okay, well, that's great. And now you're in Chicago teaching.
Yes.
What a journey. I hope to hear more about that as well. So when you started out undergrad, was your intention to go get your master's and all the way up to a PhD? Can you talk about what that process was like or how you got exposed and chose accounting as your major?
Well, sure. I always liked money. So I always liked understanding money, counting money, managing money. And so when I was in high school, I took my first accounting class and then just kept going all the way through. My father was a university professor and was my mentor and always encouraged me to just get school out of the way. So just go straight through, get everything done. And so that's what I did. So I always knew once I declared that I was going to major in accounting that I would go through it. I would get my master's, I'd get my PhD. And so that's what I did. So that's why I was really young when I came out of the PhD program. So I finished when I was 26 years old. which was pretty young at the time. But now I think you have a lot of people that go straight through. But at the time, people really didn't do that because everybody would graduate from undergrad and go get a job and then work and then go get an MBA. And I was still in school while all my friends were out working, making a lot of money. But I stayed in school. So my path was a little different.
Right. You're a doctor. Okay. Did you start in academia right after that working, or did you eventually, once you finished that, go into corporate or public accounting?
So again, another non-traditional journey. I started out, once I earned my PhD from Virginia Tech, I went straight and got my first academic job at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And then I was there for 4 years and just wanted something different. So that's when I went to work at KPMG in Chicago. So I wanted to get that experience. When I got there at KPMG, and I was like, you know, I think I've missed my time on this. You know, I was mid-30s, pregnant, first baby. And I was like, okay, I left higher ed academia to do this now. I think I missed the time. So I went back into academia.
Gotcha. Okay. So you didn't really stay in the corporate,
not long,
public accounting realm long.
No, not long. It wasn't for me at the time. I missed that season in life. So it's time for me to go back.
Well, how did you, or why did you start specializing in forensic accounting and fraud aspect?
I really liked the integration of a lot of different disciplines in accounting. And so I look at forensic accounting as a culmination of auditing, psychology, financial accounting, sociology, criminology, sort of all rolled up in this one field called forensic accounting. And I liked the diversity of all those fields coming together. So it was interesting to me to use all of these different kind of skill sets in addition to auditing training or financial accounting training.
Gotcha. Is that what you studied in, or your thesis, or what you concentrated on through your master's and doctoral program? Fraud.
Well, my dissertation was about how accounting students reason through ethical dilemmas. So I was in this ethics space, but then I felt that ethics was a very general, broad area that often is discussed by philosophy majors, philosophy PhDs. And so I felt I wanted to specialize even more. And so I feel like fraud and fraud research is the absence of ethics. So that's what led me to that field.
Gotcha. Okay. So back when you were in school and knowing you were going to go all the way through to get your PhD, when you decided to become a CPA, did you have enough credits, or did you have to take prep? Did you have to do the traditional prep courses, or were you working in and felt comfortable enough to just sit for the exam?
No, even teaching. I mean, I taught for 4 years before I sat for the exam, but even then I did Becker. You know, I highly advise doing the prep exams, because the way we teach, we don't teach to the exam. And so a lot of times you need to learn how to study for an exam and take an exam, which is very different than sometimes how we teach in higher education. So I took a prep class.
You went through that process. And you mentioned this earlier. So why did you decide to become a CPA after you had all the education? So what led you, or what happened along the way where you said, maybe I do, or some say, yes, you do need a CPA?
Well, it's hard to teach students that they should be doing it when you're not. So I felt like I was not being authentic to myself or authentic to the profession. So I felt like it was something that I needed to get. And I'm glad I did. You know, how would I feel? How would I look if I'm teaching and educating tomorrow's future CPAs and I'm not one? So it was something that was really important, that I felt like it was a box that I needed to check for sure.
Was that more personal, or did you find it professionally among your peers, or maybe
it was more personal,
kind of pressuring you?
No, personal pressure. It was all me. If I never got the CPA license, it wouldn't have really affected my academic career, but professionally, it always would be like a red flag. Why wouldn't you? You know, if you're studying accounting, you've been studying accounting for 20 plus years, why wouldn't you be a CPA? You know?
Right. Okay. And I was just wondering what books.
And, you know, being an African-American female, being an African-American, you can't not have the credential that everybody else has and thinks is going to be okay for you. If that's the goal, if that's the standard, you should at least have that too. So that was sort of my thought process of as to why I did it.
Right. Okay. So in the classroom, do you have many students who that's their trajectory that while they've declared accounting as their major, is the end goal to be a CPA? And then on top of that, if you can, we can kind of unpack that, the racial makeup of that.
I don't know what a lot of students want to do these days. You know, I hope that if you major in accounting, the ultimate goal is to sit for the exam. It's like, why would you go to law school if you weren't going to sit for the bar? Why would you go to medical school if you weren't going to sit for your boards? Why would you major in accounting and not sit for the CPA exam? So I assume that most people want to do that. When they don't want to do it, I always ask them, why major in accounting? You could do something else that doesn't have an exam at the end if you don't plan to do it. So it's a very valuable skill that I think we should all, if you pursue this as a major, there's no reason why you shouldn't do it.
Gotcha. Well, back in undergrad, did you have classmates talking about being CPAs? And
Oh, sure.
Ultimate goal?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think it's poor coaching for you to major in this field and not do it. I mean, it should be your goal. It should be your end goal, because why would you not?
Gotcha. And I know you said in academics in the classroom, you don't necessarily teach to the exam. So have you seen or heard anything from students trying to prepare, matriculating through college, but yet trying to figure out how to build in time to study for this huge exam, 4-part exam?
Well, it sort of goes, if you've learned how to learn, then you should be able to study for the exam. And the problem is a lot of students haven't learned how to learn. So they don't know how to sit down and learn and master a massive exam like the CPA exam, because they focused their education so much around a test. What is the professor going to ask me for the test? And once they find out what's on the test, they put it on the test and then they forget. CPA exam is really about, do you have knowledge of accounting? It's not around, can you answer a test question correctly? It's about, do you have knowledge? Can you reason through scenarios? And so a lot of students haven't learned how to study that way. And so therefore, I think they find it difficult when they come and sit and start studying for the CPA exam. So you have to really learn how to learn in order to be successful at studying for the CPA exam.
So where do you learn how to learn?
You learn how to learn from listening to your professors. You learn how to learn by not cutting corners, by studying, by getting prepared for class, by taking your notes, by doing your homework assignments, you doing them, not borrowing somebody else's. That's how you learn. All the things that your professors are putting forth in front of you is how you learn. What we do as students sometimes is we try to cut all those corners. And the only thing you're doing is hurting yourself when you do that, because you're not learning how to learn when you don't do what is prescribed and laid out for you.
Gotcha. So CPA candidates watching this, did you hear that? Rewind, go back, listen to that, and make sure you are learning how to learn and talking to the professors, getting some feedback or advice. And what level of accounting courses do you teach currently?
So I teach both graduate and undergraduate. I teach both managerial accounting, financial accounting, and forensic accounting, both all undergraduate and graduate.
Gotcha. And I know you started out undergrad and graduated there from an HBCU, and I would assume DePaul University is considered a PWI, for those who don't know, predominantly white institution. And I'm sure it's a vast difference in the student body. But in the accounting program or the business school where you're saying, what's the racial makeup, would you say, in your class?
So what's interesting about DePaul is a very diverse university. So where we might not have a large African-American student population, we are a very international population. In the business school, however, you don't have as many students that choose to major in accounting. And that's a choice, you know, like when there's an opportunity to select majors, accounting just tends to be not one that's selected. So there's not a lot of students of color, primarily African-American students in the business school.
And I think that's part of the reason we're underrepresented, because they don't even major in it, so let alone becoming a CPA. So, but why do you think that is? Or what can we do to close the gap or make it more interesting or glamorous?
I don't think it's about glamour. I think it's about, it's a lot of work. You know, I mean, if you look at college, it depends on your lens. If you look at college as a place where you want to have a bunch of fun, party, hang out, and do all those things, accounting is probably not your major. But you know, you think about it, there's plenty of people that major in biology and the sciences and go to medical school. They have that known when they're 18 and 19 that that's what they want to do. Accounting requires a commitment early on. So it's not one of these majors where you can study the night before for an exam. You know, it takes some serious commitment. So I think so maybe we don't always want to work that hard. You know, maybe we don't know that we're up for that challenge at 18 or 19. Maybe we don't have accountants or examples in our families, or we don't see them, so we choose not to pursue that. I'm not sure. But, you know, everybody's inspiration comes from different places. And, you know, it just depends on what you surround yourself by, you know, as to what you become or what you aspire to be. So I don't know why we don't choose it.
And then I was wondering too, I've gotten some feedback over the years talking about how costly it is, the prep courses, and then the testing fees. So I was just wondering if you'd gotten any feedback or heard that from students, whether black or white, if that was a hindrance along the way.
I think the students that are mature understand that it is a small, minor investment for a much bigger gain. If you think about, oh my goodness, I have to spend $2,000 over the course of a lifetime, that's not a lot of money. It might be a couple pennies a day when you think about the longevity of the career of a CPA. But at that moment in time, it probably feels like a lot, but it's worth the investment. It's probably the first investment you as an adult will make in yourself. And I think it's a small one, but it gives you a lot more reward if you do it.
Gotcha. But I think some people don't have that perspective, or maybe they're too short-sighted, don't look at it that way. And I think I've heard recently that Becker's upwards almost 5,000 now, so much so that they'll finance it for you. So that's a big commitment if you need to finance it and pay it out over time.
It is a big commitment, but if you think about it, if you declare your major as a freshman, you have an internship your freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, save a little bit, maybe apply for some scholarship money. If you plan, you could probably save enough of it up. If you plan. If you don't plan.
I think that's it, what you're saying right there.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying about planning.
You have to plan. Yeah. I mean, just like if you went and bought a car, you got to plan. You know, so it's just, you have to be willing to make that investment in yourself and plan for it.
And also, I think sometimes maybe African Americans aren't exposed to the accounting profession and all the different directions you can go with having a degree in accounting and eventually being a CPA. So like you said, if you're saying your freshman year, they may be behind the 8 ball by the time they decide, oh, that's what I want to do.
Well, yeah, I look at that a little differently, because you think about this.
Okay.
Information is not hidden from us. You expose yourself to whatever you want to know, right? Okay. So if you want to know what a lawyer does, Google it. Look up what a lawyer does. If you want to know what a doctor or a dentist or an orthopedic surgeon does, you can look it up. You can find it. If you want to know what an accountant does, Google it. You can find out. So our exposure, to me, is really self-imposed. We can be exposed to anything. Someone doesn't have to bring it to us for us to be exposed. Just look, think about what are careers in business. Think about the way college is organized. It's organized by colleges. It's college business, college of education, college of life, health and life sciences. Everything's organized in a college. Then look at college and look at the majors. There's not that many in each college. And if you see something that you don't know that might sound intriguing, look it up. So you can't really say, I don't think we should say as a people that we're not exposed to it when we can be. We can find it. No one is hiding information from us anymore. So we can find it. So, you know, think about who controls money. If you're interested, there's lots of ways to be exposed to the careers of a finance professional or an accounting professional. So you can find it.
And I know you mentioned your father was a professor. Is that right? So I'm sure when you talk about lens or perspective, I'm sure education was at the forefront in your house growing up.
It was, but you know, I'll use my dad as an example. Both my grandparents never even finished elementary school. So my dad's exposure was because my dad was seeking it. You know, he graduated from Fisk University. I remember him always telling me he picked cotton in the summer to afford college. You know, so his exposure was what he found. And so although he was a mentor for me, he didn't have that. You know, he didn't have that at his fingertips, but he found it and he created it. So, you know, you have to find, everybody has to live their life and be on their own journey, but you can't let, you just can't let things be roadblocks for you. You have to get around them. And so it's hard to say I wasn't exposed to a certain profession when you can be exposed to it. It's not, I mean, accounting is a very public and vocal kind of field, you know, so there's lots of us out there if you look for us.
Gosh. Well, I'll just say from my own experience, I probably wasn't made aware of what a CPA was until I was in my 20s. So when did you come in contact or even know about a CPA before, outside of school?
Probably my first exposure was probably around in college too, when I read about it. You know, when I was taking my first accounting class and they went through and talked about what a controller was, what a CPA does, and you know, you just read it. Now, if you skip over that part of the book and you don't read it, then you weren't exposed to it. So you're limiting your own self. But probably around the same time, you know, what does a CPA do? What does an auditor do? You know, just reading about it. So we probably had similar exposure.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because my father wasn't an accountant. He wasn't a CPA. So, you know, and I don't recall many of his friends who came around, they weren't CPAs either. But I remember reading about it in school.
Right. And you mentioned you have along these lines of questions. When did you come in contact with another Black CPA? At what point was it in college or even your career? When did you, because people I talk to, or even in my own experience, it's seldom that I run into a Black CPA. Not that I'm seeking them out, but just in where I work or the type of work I do, line of work, it doesn't happen.
You know, I can't remember that date, but I'll tell you this, knowing that there's only, 5,000 CPAs in the United States, the likelihood of you running into one is very slim because there's not a lot of us.
It's what, 650,000 total in the U.S. and we make up approximately 5,000, which you can't even compute it. It's less. They just say less than 1% because it's 0.000.
So the likelihood isn't that you're going to run into one because we don't choose this as an option. So, probably in my late 20s. Mm-hmm. I mean, what I say is that creates a huge opportunity for us, for young people. I mean, if there's less than 1%, let's get that number up by people choosing this as a career.
Gotcha. And on campus, or do you have NABA on campus? Is there a concerted effort around increasing the number of Black CPAs or Black accounting students?
Yeah, so we do have NABA on campus, but I think what's interesting about NABA, so NABA, I don't know that NABA's mission is to increase CPAs.
I don't think so, but go ahead.
And that's different. You know, when you think about accountants and CPAs are two different tracks.
True.
So, you know, the National Association of Black Accountants is very different than the National Association of Black CPAs. Those are two different groups. And so we do have NABA on campus, but we have a fair amount of non-accounting majors in NABA too. So hence, when you talk about this lack of pipeline, you know, if NABA isn't promoting it or making it a priority, making sure that every member is a CPA. I mean, just think where NABA would be if every member were a CPA. It would be more than 1%.
Right, but I think it's more geared toward to be more inclusive and include all aspects of accounting. Like you say, that could include staff accounts, tax preparers, bookkeepers.
And we will continue to be less than 1%.
And I am on a mission to increase that number somehow, some way in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is. So how does your
career... You know, I think what's different though, what's really different about accounting is we are one of the rare fields that has an option to have a very fruitful career without being certified. Think about this. You don't know many lawyers that didn't pass the bar, right? You don't know many doctors that didn't pass the board. You don't know many dentists that didn't pass the board. But accounting, there's two tracks. You can be an accountant or you can be a CPA. If you go in-house and be an accountant at a firm, you don't have to have a CPA. You could still rise up the ranks and be a CFO without being a CPA. We have a really interesting career track because I think most, or not most, a lot of fields that have professional licensures alongside of them don't really work that way. What lawyer didn't pass the board? You know, think about that. What lawyer goes to law school and says, I'm not going to take the bar. I'm just going to go to law school and then just have this career outside of passing the bar? It doesn't work that way in those fields. So I think accounting is interesting because we have this parallel track that's been created where you can have a very fruitful career without being a CPA. And so maybe we've tended to gear towards that because you can.
And right, and you're seeing that more in industry or in corporate. But so that leads to another question. How relevant is the CPA or having those credentials behind your name?
I mean, I think it's very relevant. I think showing that you've mastered a skill and you have an expertise in a field is very relevant. But there's a lot of change because what you notice is there's a fair amount of people that are not CPAs anymore.
Right.
So you know, the relevancy is for sure in question, but I think it's very important.
Especially as you say, you can rise through the ranks, still be promoted, and then make a handsome salary along with that. And not be stifled as I'm hearing more maybe in public accounting, some of the big 3 and 4 maybe, but in just corporate America or private industry, you can rise up the ranks and make plenty of money without CPA.
Sure. There's a fair amount of CFOs at major corporations that are not CPAs. So, you know, there is a precedent for that. And I think that sort of combats with our numbers being low because you can do that.
So what do we do in the profession or even in academic side to maybe change that or see what we can do to, like you say, combat that?
I really don't know because it's all about personal preference. You know, what do people see? Where do they want to see themselves? You know, what type of, I wanted a major and I want a major, encourage my kids to develop a major that gives you a skill set in doing something. If I want to go and start a tax practice, I can do that. I could be an entrepreneur. I could go into a company. I could work in the Big 4. Like I want to acquire a skill set. And so that's another reason why accounting as a field was interesting to me. Okay. So, you know, just, it depends on what you want to do with your life. What do you want to acquire a skill that's transferable to a lot of different disciplines or not? If you do, then this would be something you might want to do.
Okay, well, that's a good segue in how it takes you in many different directions. So you as a producer, director, filmmaker, author, how did you end up producing the documentary, All the Queen's Horses? How did that come out?
It started because I was just mesmerized by the story. Mm-hmm. And I had been doing some just filmmaking with a group on the side anyhow. And when the story happened, I thought, wow, this will make for a really neat documentary. And so I just started working and going back and forth to Dixon. And 5 years later, I had a film.
Okay. Did that interest you? Is that something more you want to pursue? Or like you say, it just kind of came together that way?
I use video a lot as a teaching tool. So it's something that I've learned and acquired. And so have an interest in digital storytelling. So it's just something that I like to do. And so I'd like to create a lot of things that I use in the classroom.
Oh, so you were doing this video conferencing and digital information way before the pandemic hit and everybody had to go on Zoom and Google Meet. You were already comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
So you were not brand new to this.
No.
Gotcha. Okay. And being an expert and a lecturer, do you do a lot of online teaching?
Mm-hmm. I do a lot of online teaching. I like it. I mean, it gives me a flexibility that I appreciate because you reach more people. Like the conferences now are bigger. And so, you know, where you might talk to 90 people, it's turned into 500 people. So I really do enjoy it.
Gotcha. And your emphasis, it sounds like a lot of it has to do with fraud and forensic accounting. Do you think that's necessary to get those additional credentials or certifications behind your name? Like, if you
I don't. I mean, I think the most important one is the CPA. I really do. No, I don't. You know, if you want to go and get a CFE, go right ahead. But I think that the gold standard is a CPA. So, I mean, that's just me. But yeah, I think that I mean, yeah, I think the CPA is the most important one.
that's sufficient. Yeah, and you mentioned your daddy being your mentor, but do you have any mentees, or do you specifically seek out to be a mentor, or have people come along under your tutelage?
I've had mentees in the past. You know, the mentor-mentee relationship is tough because, you know, being a mentee means you have to listen to advice. And sometimes people don't want to listen. And so, oh no. So, you know, it's an interesting relationship when you mentor mentee. You have to listen. And so I've always, in my mentor-mentee relationships, especially somebody that is older than me, that has had success, when I'm coming to them with questions, I'm coming with open ears. I don't know that I always say the same thing for our generation now, because if I'm giving you some advice, I'm giving you because I want to help you, not because I want you to defend why what I'm saying is wrong or right. So it's an interesting relationship. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You've had that experience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So what are your thoughts or advice on that when you say come being open and willing to accept maybe some constructive criticism? To be politically correct.
That's the advice. Be open to it, you know, because I mean, no one is saying anything to hurt you. Remember, people are always saying things to make you better. And so you have to believe that. And so you need to almost ask yourself, can I be menteed? You know, it's a question that you want to ask yourself. Do I really want to be menteed, or do I want a cheerleader? Because typically a mentor isn't always a cheerleader. And okay. A cheerleader is a different type of person, you know. But if you really want to be shaped and molded, you need to really ask yourself, do you want to be mentored?
Gotcha. Well, I understand you talked about your dad, but since you've been in your career, did you have a professional mentor?
Yeah, I did. Several for different reasons, at different points. You know, you go through different seasons in your life. So you meet and need different people for different reasons. So I have a bunch of mentors that I go to for a multitude of things.
Gotcha. Okay. And where you work at, is it, like you said, diverse university student population, but what about faculty wise?
Yeah, we're one of the most diverse business schools in the universe in the US. So yeah, it's a diverse group as well at the faculty level too.
Oh, okay. That's good. Do you work or do you do any other things with other universities or internationally?
What do you mean? When you say do I do any things, what do you mean?
Have any relationships where you may be on the faculty?
Oh no.
With other universities, or do special speaking engagements with them?
I do.
Visiting professor, since you're a doctor.
I'll do speaking engagements here and there, but I'm only on faculty at one school.
Gosh. Okay. Or is that by choice?
That's typically what it is. It's sort of the standard.
Oh, okay. So in closing the gap and trying to increase the number of Black CPAs, do you think it's worthwhile joining different organizations? Or should you just set out back to what you were saying as a freshman, you need to plan? Or do you think the networking aspect makes a difference?
I mean, I think it helps, but listen, the only thing that you can do to be a CPA is sit down in your room and study. I mean, that's the main thing. You have to do the work. So networking and meeting people, that's all great and good. But if they inspire you to study, then I say do that. But if they take away from your study time, then, you have to manage that. But at the end of the day, if you want to pass the exam, you got to sit down, open your book and read and study. And that's it. It's not a secret sauce. That's what you have to do. So you can join, you probably only need one main organization. So you can manage that one, so you can sit down and study.
That's pretty much it. Do you remember when you were studying, did you have any retakes? Any advice on it back when you were going through that, or what order to take the exams? Your experience?
I don't remember that, but I do remember study. You know, you study. You just have to study. There's no if, ands, buts around it. You just have to study.
Gotcha. So after going through undergrad, getting your master's and being a PhD, have expert in accounting, and then deciding to be a CPA, what does that mean to you, have a CPA behind your name along with being a doctor at the beginning of your name?
I think it just shows your commitment to your profession. I think that's important. I like to be a part of something. I am an accountant. I am a CPA. I like that. I don't want to just be a marketing person, because there's not like a structured field around that. I like being part of an organized, recognized profession. So I like that.
So that was it. So do you have any other credentials you'll be pursuing as a lifelong learner?
No, ma'am. I'm good. No, I'm too old now.
One last question then. So do you have anything on the horizon, production-wise? Anything under your belt that you're going to be releasing anytime soon?
Yeah, just working on a gaming platform I created called Red Flag Mania. So that's about it. And just still doing my research and still teaching and staying busy.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to squeeze me in. For those who don't know, or whenever you watch this on a weekend, thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I reached out to her on Instagram and she said yes. So I want to say thank you. I appreciate it. This is my guest today, Dr. Kelly Richmond Pope, CPA. And before I disconnect, remember who you are and whose you are, and there's no time like the present. Thank you.